which I'm going to do next week.
And welcome to our YouTube coverage on this election night. We are pleased to have with us our election analyst, Susan Richardson Williams, who's a Republican and runs her own PR firm.
Hello.
Hello. And on this election evening, we also welcome Don Bosch, who is a Democrat and runs his own law firm.
Good evening, and this is where we get a little goofier.
Yes, it is. It's YouTube. It's the YouTube insanity. John North is my colleague here at WBIR.
Happy primary day, everybody.
Happy
Super
Tuesday.
Tuesday. This is a big deal.
It is.
It is a big deal.
It doesn't feel like it. It is.
It is a very big deal. And John, let's just talk about, for people who are happen to be tuning in, Super Tuesday, it's generally consequential because so many states have something at stake today.
Yeah, you've got, I think, 16 that have something at stake. And that's usually, if you remember, once upon a time, people were like, oh, no, I don't think we want to let everybody put so many eggs in one basket like Super Tuesday does. But it is a big deal. It's generally very exciting. Maybe not this year because we know who's going to get all the delegates from both sides.
Almost like two incumbents running.
Yeah, it is like two incumbents running. But typically, I don't know, 2008, holy cow, that would have been a big deal. 12, even 16 was a huge deal.
We are coming to you live on YouTube because we're still awaiting results from Knox County. Typically takes at least until 8:30 to get those unofficial results, and then we start seeing them come in. First early voting, and then we'll see them by precinct. When that happens, we'll bring it to you live. But Susan and Don, let's just set the scene here locally. There were contested races, but it seemed like this election was lacking a little bit of energy.
Contested over there.
Yes. We saw one on the Democrat
side.
But Susan, let's just talk about what's at stake for people who are tuning in and want to know. Let's go race by race.
Hopefully they've already voted and saw on their ballot what was up. Of course, the Republican primary have all of the candidates were on there, even though we're kind of down to Trump and Nikki Haley. Locally, the two big races, I think, are the assessor property, because we do not have an incumbent there. John Whitehead is term limited, and on the law director. And those are both have their contest and are probably pretty heated races.
Phil Ballard, you mentioned he's held that post before.
In the past.
And he's taking on someone who is known in the city-county building and among the assessor's
Jackie
office.
Raley was endorsed by the current property assessor, John Whitehead, and certainly known in the city-county building. And Phil Ballard was there before. He's been running television ads. His name will be first on the ballot, and sometimes when you have a low turnout, that matters.
He's saying he's running for re-election, which is a little bit misleading.
Right, a little bit misleading.
Gee, it sounds like a presidential candidate that I've heard of.
But we also have county commission races. We have school board races. And so, we all think about the presidential races. This is normal. They're the ones that catch all the attention. But the truth is, these local races impact us much more.
And I just want to break in here because we are seeing some votes come in.
Oh, excellent. Let's see.
Yeah, 8:30.
8:36. That's about on time.
Let's
Chris
mark.
Davis, well done. We'll give you a star for that one.
Again, these results are unofficial. I'm just scrolling through them as you are. But Donald Trump, obviously out front, he has about 65% of the vote with the early count. And let's move Hector Sanchez as the judge race. So he was not challenged.
Not opposed.
I'm just rolling
He got
through
his
here.
mother to vote for him. He's good. He'll be back.
Garrett Holt and Liz Tombras. Let's start there. County Commission District 4, Susan, and this is because the current county commissioner decided not to run.
He could have run again, but he decided not to. Not because I blame him. But
at this point, I want to get reaction from all three of you. But Garrett Holt is out front with 68% of the vote, 1,700 votes to 768 to Liz Tombras. What do you make of that race, Susan?
Not a surprise at all. Garrett's been very engaged. He ran before. He's been on the ballot before, and he's been very engaged with the county Republican Party and a lot of the local politicos, and so I'm not at all surprised about that.
Liz Tombras, I think I saw that her biggest ad platform or campaign platform, so to speak, was, well, Garrett, he really was a Democrat before.
Yeah.
And that just didn't play
There was
well.
I think it's the West Knox Republican Club challenged Garrett Holt, and
The bona fides
bona
argument.
fides,
Yeah,
Yes.
and said he's not really a Republican. I think that even went to like a state committee meeting
did.
in Nashville
And it
or
did not
Middle
work.
Tennessee.
Well-
Did not work.
And the bona fides argument, it's interesting because I know a lot of people who consider themselves moderate, even Democrat, and again, who went over to the Republican primary.
Crossover.
As you can do, because we don't have registration, despite some of the things that everything from Trey Hargett on down, people are saying. And they're like, there's no play in the Democratic primary. I may vote for a number of Democratic candidates in the general, but I'm going to go over here and I'm going to vote. And I didn't hear anybody that was per se voting to get a worse Republican candidate in there. I'm sure there were some, but they're just like, no, I'm going to vote. I want the best people that to hold the job, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat. And because really all the Democrats are going to advance.
You had no sandbox to play in if you were only really.
No, I mean, it's important if you're a Democrat. I mean, I vote in the Democrat primary. I always will, always have. And but
A
you're
lot
right.
of your friends did. They crossed
No,
over.
they crossed over, but I talked to them, and Garrett's a perfect example. They were voting for Garrett versus Liz Tombrus. They were voting for Buick over Herrera, who's that race has gotten a lot of attention for county law director.
Yeah, what's the numbers on that one?
Let me get you. I'll look at that, but I want to run down District 5 because this was
It's
packed.
a big race.
Oh,
This
yes.
is a big race.
Big
That,
race.
that
Five
would be my
Republicans
county
running in that
commission
one.
district.
Yes, and Angela, let's see.
Russell.
Brad Hall, 682 votes.
Okay.
Angela Russell, 1,800.
Okay.
Tony Scott, 800. Dale Skidmore, 200. Brian Walker, 348.
That's very
Angela
interesting.
Russell?
Angela Russell. She. Some Republicans have told me they're a little scared about her.
47% of the vote at the moment,
Yeah.
John.
Which
That's-
Republicans? Because there are two stripes these days.
Well, more of the Susan type Republican, I guess I would say.
We're
Right.
scared of her.
But Angela Russell raised a lot of money. She raised a lot of money,
did.
and so did Tony Scott.
Well, there were so many candidates in that, and if the conservatives decided to select Angela and concentrate on voting for her, and your other voters, probably split their votes on these others, on Brad Hall and Brian Walker, Tony Scott and Skidmore, and that's probably what's happened.
Then we've got Commission District 6, Terry Hill, and that's Julie McBee Fritz. Terry Hill out front with about 68% of the vote with 1,600 votes. Any surprise there?
No surprise.
None.
no.
What do you
She's the
see?
incumbent.
She's
like-
incumbent chairman of county commission.
What do you see like District 9? That's South Knoxville. That's Carson Daly's seat.
Stand by. I'll get to that one second. Let me go.
He's
let me
not
just go.
going to let us jump ahead. I
County
can
Commission
tell.
District 8, DJ Corcoran, former
Okay.
Knox County firefighter
Right.
spokesperson.
Right.
He's out front with
Out front.
40% over Kara Daly in that one.
She owns the Twisters restaurants.
And Adam Thompson.
Yeah.
Corcoran's got name rec.
DJ definitely had
He does.
name recognition.
And he's first on the ballot.
Okay, now to your favorite, John. District 9, Andy Fox, who
Yeah.
raised a ton of cash
That's
as
Bill
a lawyer.
Fox's son.
Very conservative attorney
Yep.
against Barry Neal. Andy Fox, 69% of the percentage vote there so far, against Barry Neal at 30%. So Andy Fox has made no bones. He's a Second Amendment advocate, and
He's filed some crazy litigation out there on behalf of some very conservative causes that has not gotten a lot of traction to date.
any
Looks like
any
he's
other
gonna-
perspective
looks
on
like
that?
he's
It'd
gonna
be-
be
it'd
our
the-
county commissioner.
Well, the Republican nominee.
If these numbers hold up, you're going to be seeing some very conservative people on county commission.
Yes, indeed.
Well, again, and I'm
Matthew
just,
Park is running in the
Matthew
ninth.
Park over in 9 for the Democrats is well known, and that district is starting to trend purple. And so that's a district. Don't count it. I know you guys
Look
are
at
shaking it
John.
off, but do not count Matthew Park out. He's been a good candidate for the Democrats.
I'll give Matthew Park a greater shot over Michelle Obama in this presidential election.
All right.
Let's move to Assessor of Property. Phil Ballard, and this one's tight. Has 48% of the vote. Jackie Raley, 51% of the vote.
Oh, wow.
So that one's way too close to call. Certainly.
Is this early voting?
This is as early as it gets.
All early?
I'm not sure it's all early vote because there are no precincts reporting yet. But
It
I'm
has
just
to be.
refreshing.
I would think it's all early votes.
Yeah, there's no absentee yet either.
Yeah.
So
So, I mean, these numbers may change wildly.
51,
We're just
48,
calling this
wow.
as we see it off the county website right
I
now.
think we
Does it
all
show a
thought that one
percentage?
would be very
No,
close.
because there's no percentage of precincts reporting yet. So
It's gotta be
then,
early vote.
if you look at law director David Book, 62% to Daniel Herrera's 37 right now.
I predict that'll hold up.
So that's out early.
Okay.
Just a reminder that that was about 25,000 people casting early ballots in Knox County, and Chris Davis was anticipating the potential for maybe another 30 to 35,000 people voting today in person.
And
We'll
what
see.
is
Nice day, but I'm not sure it's going to get to that number.
Yeah, maybe 40,000. We'll see.
well, what's pathetic about that is, so if you just look in simple math, if you look at the early vote, out of every 10 people who could vote, one
Right.
did. And in this county, typically in the last several elections, out of every 10 people who could vote, only 4 did.
Yeah.
And I might add that people my age and John North's age and
We
John
vote.
Bosch's age
Yes.
all
We do.
vote.
We vote.
Yeah.
Maybe even
That's-
Becker's age, but he doesn't
Nah,
tell the
he's
truth
not.
about his
The
age.
vast majority, 55 plus, are the ones that have voted in vast numbers.
Let's look quickly at Board of Education, District 3 on the Republican side, Daspit, Gothard, Daspit, 37%, Gothard 62%.
That's interesting. Daspit was probably more conservative, ex-coach, a little bit
Yeah.
more outspoken about sort of conservative principles, I'd say. The District 8,
Eight is an interesting.
school board, that's going to be a
Lincoln's
winner
and
take
Wright.
all, yeah.
So this is the one where, and this one, we're
Mike
focused on
McMillan's-
this. Yeah, Mike McMillan died last month. What's extraordinary about this is the candidate who wins tonight will likely be tomorrow appointed. To that office by county commission, and then the next day
Yeah.
be voting on the school board.
Yeah.
And
because
still
they
have
have
to
a
run in
meeting.
the general in August,
Yeah.
but unopposed, absent
And will be
write-ins.
running as the incumbent.
So right now, exactly, Travis Wright has that handedly, just with the number of votes of 61% to 38% over Lakins.
I think Dave Wright is his uncle, who of course is very well known in District 8, and
Long-time politician.
Travis
They
Wright
got the
has
focus,
a son. I
the
think
focus support.
that's helped him. He's got a son, 13 years old, and I think that's one reason he said he really wanted to get involved in school board was because he had a son in the school system.
And John, worth noting for our viewers who probably know this, but the school board is recently partisan.
Yeah, as of a year or two ago, suddenly something that a lot of people, including Democrats, had resisted and said there's no need for this, it's completely pointless, this ought to be a nonpartisan body. And the prevailing political winds were no, we want it to be partisan. And so on Knox County School Board, you have 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans right now, give or take. Jennifer Owens says she's an independent, but she tends to vote Democrat. And now with whichever Republican wins tonight, it'll be 5-4-ish.
Back to 5-4
basically.
because
Yeah,
McMillan was.
He was definitely a Republican, yeah. His dad had been in that county commission seat for District 8 a long time ago.
Any other takeaways on what we're going to see from from a national look tonight with Donald Trump, Nikki Haley, Susan? What do you expect will happen in the next few weeks?
Well, Donald Trump will be the nominee.
In a couple of weeks,
as
he
far
will
as
be the nominee.
Delegate count. We're Republicans, we select delegates to go to the convention, and you have to vote for your candidate the first 2 rounds. And in this case, I'm not sure there's not going to be many people. Nikki Haley may have some delegates. Ron DeSantis has a few, I think. But by and large, it's going to be a Donald Trump convention. And so I think we're going to see, a coronation once again in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I think one interesting thing that people don't know in Tennessee, the Republican Party here is viewed as proportional, so that our delegates, it's not a winner take all. However, if a candidate gets 66% of the vote, statewide
Statewide.
and by congressional district, they get all the delegates. And it looks like, I think the last numbers we saw, Donald Trump had something like 80%.
He's on the verge. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Here in Knox County,
Knox
alone,
County, 66 or
65,
something.
yeah.
So it could be close, and maybe Nikki Haley gets one delegate if he doesn't get 66% in the congressional race. So whoever is on the ballot for Nikki Haley that gets the number one, the most votes, could end up being one delegate from our 2nd congressional district to vote for Nikki Haley.
Would
But
that
again,
be you if you got to go
It would not be me because I was a DeSantis delegate.
on the 3rd vote?
Could be, yeah. But
Brian Hornback is a Haley.
he is a Haley delegate, or running for delegate. But I think statewide, you're going to see, and like I said, we're looking at 80%. So Trump will get the state delegates, all of them.
Right.
And so he,
The question is, does Steve Cohen's district over in Memphis?
Right.
He's not going to carry that by the requisite number.
right. So,
And
so there may be some others that get to go to the convention for somebody else besides Trump. But overall, it's going to be a very Trump-heavy delegation.
And just explain why we as voters voted for 14 delegates.
Right. Well, we have 57 delegates, I think, from Tennessee. And so there are 14 elected statewide. There are 3 elected from each congressional district. And then the state party, the state executive committee, selects 14 others. And so that makes up our delegation. They just select them. It used to be where it was your governor and your congressmen, your senators, that kind of stuff that got those positions. And now they all get floor passes, so they don't necessarily need to
they just
run.
want to go to the
They
convention.
like to
That
go.
was their
Right.
ticket
Yeah.
early
Yeah,
on.
it was. However, the 57, again, they're pledged to vote through the first 2 ballots. Now, this year, I think it's a no-brainer. I think it's going to be Donald Trump, on the first ballot, and the balloons will come down, and everybody will, applaud. But there have been times past when you have voted twice, and then people could change their minds and vote for someone else. So we'll see. But I don't foresee any surprises this year in Tennessee or at the convention.
Does Haley the other day on one of the talk shows said she wasn't necessarily bound by the Republican pledge to support Trump. Does she stick
Right.
with that?
She probably, she's been out there saying that for quite a while now, and it's certainly going to help her be vice presidential candidate.
Trump's
for sure.
Oh, I don't think-
spokesperson had a
yeah,
pretty sort of crude thing
He
that he
had.
said
Well,
about
because her
her.
bird brain, which is ridiculous. She's brilliant. And she was a good governor. She was a good ambassador to the United Nations. She's certainly smart.
She's young
But-
enough that she's certainly viable in
And
28.
she's 52, I think.
Yeah, I mean, she'll look great compared
Yeah,
to the current
age-wise.
generation of leadership in
I
Congress and the White
supported
House.
DeSantis, who was 42, and I think 4 years from now he'll be somebody that, assuming Florida stays in the.
Won't be any nicer though. He'll still be as mean.
No,
He's
I
not
predict
mean.
he won't.
He's not mean. He's
Susan,
not mean.
he wasn't mean at your fundraiser. Please,
No, he
punch
wasn't.
and cookies make anybody nice.
I've been on all kinds of Zoom calls with that man, and
With all Republican supporters of his.
well, yes, they were. They were
If I pay you
That's
$10,
Disney.
will you wear a pair of mouse ears the next time you do a
Yeah,
Zoom call?
exactly.
I don't
Susan,
know.
you've been to how many conventions now?
If I go to this one, it'll be the 10th or 11th. I can't have to remember. My first one was in 1964, the Goldwater Convention with my mother. She was an alternate delegate, and I was a page. And so that sort of got my, political juices flowing, I guess. And then I went again. I started going again in the 1980. Bill Bright was national party chairman. And so I went as staff. I worked for him. I worked at the convention. And then 84, I was state party chairman. That was in Dallas, and that was the Reagan reelect. And so then I worked for UT, so I couldn't go. So I had a little hiatus, and then I started back up in 96, I think, and have been to all of them since then. I don't know as I'll get to go to this one. And I kind of hate it because I've never been to Wisconsin. It's my 50th state, and I really wanted to go to this one.
Weather is
pick my
nice
state.
in the summer in
Yeah,
Wisconsin.
in
too.
July should be nice.
Don, anything about this primary and Super Tuesday on a national or local level you think is worth pointing out?
Well, on a local level, there are good candidates who are going to get through the Democratic primary, is uncontested, that are going to make the general in August interesting. Jackson Thinner over county law director, certainly a couple of the county commission candidates. There are going to be some good people come through, and I'm proud of our party because it used to be, we look at this ballot, there wouldn't even be one name in many of these, and almost every race at least has somebody that stepped up and somebody that's credible. Matthew Park over an 8. I mean, again, despite John's belief that he's not going to get a lot of traction, and Susan, but there are good candidates. Nationally, much more interesting. Unfortunately, Tennessee is still pretty red across the state. North Carolina, their Republican Party has nominated maybe the most extremist Republican on the ballot, absent Trump, anywhere in the country. He's a Holocaust denier, believes Hitler did not exterminate the Jewish population in World War II, says that men were meant to lead, not women. It's remarkable. And he won by a pretty handily margin. North Carolina tends to be a little more red than blue, but the Democratic nominee, whose name escapes me right now, is very well thought of, and that's going to be a really interesting race. The other interesting race all the way over on the left coast, the race for Dianne Feinstein's seat. Adam Schiff, a couple of other congressmen.
Yeah.
That's going to be really interesting with Steve Garvey, pitcher for the Dodgers. So I didn't like him all the way back then as a Cardinals fan, but it's interesting. He hasn't done much, spent much money, but he's right in the mix, and he may come through. They have a jungle primary. They don't run by party. So you could see Schiff and Garvey in the general election for Dianne Feinstein's Tennessee.
I thought one interesting thing we ought to point out is, you know, a couple of weeks ago, our 7th District Congressman in Tennessee, Mark Green, announced he was going to retire. And about a week ago, he announced he wasn't. He changed his mind. And I think what I've been told, it was because Donald Trump called him and said, you need to run. I need you in Congress. You know, he's chairman of Homeland Security, and that's a critical position if Trump, obviously his big issue is the border, and so I think he would like to have Mark Green in that position. That's assuming that the Republicans keep control of the House.
For people, and this is really inside baseball, but we thought he might be Secretary of the Army at one point.
At one point.
In the Trump administration, but that was pulled.
Had some background issues that came up, and
But he wrote a book, My Night with Saddam. I'm not sure that's the title, but it's something along.
Something like that. But it was the night Saddam Hussein was captured, and he was the doctor on site. And so he did write a book. He's an attractive man. He's well spoken. He is wealthy. Had a health care company, and so he will be formidable. There are 3 or 4 out there right now that are talking about it.
Let me talk about that. You mentioned wealthy, but I want to bring it back to the local elections we're seeing right now play out in Knox County. How much does money matter in this election so far based on the results you've seen?
Well, Garrett
not a
Holt.
lot.
Yeah, Garrett Holt, I would say, has probably raised and spent more money in his commission race.
And Fox?
Fox probably has. Travis Wright, I'm guessing, has. I don't know about Phil Ballard and Jackie Raley. Has anybody
I haven't
heard
looked
about
at the
that?
numbers, but I'll bet it's pretty.
And I
bet it's
suspect
close.
that Ballard still had a moldy war chest from when
Probably
he was before. And
Jackie
so,
Raley in her position would have been able to draw a lot of contributions.
Yeah.
So that's probably, I would say, probably at least 10 to 15
I bet it's
K
close.
each.
Yeah.
Right.
I bet it's close.
And what do you think? Let's just take the typical county commission race. If you're going to run for county commission, what can you expect to spend in the primary and the general total?
I'd say around 40 to 50,000.
Mm-hmm.
If you're opposed and you have to buy
Right.
any kind of radio or television.
in one of the districts that would be competitive, like 4, possibly 5, either competitive either way. There are some that are a couple that skew heavily left and others that skew right. But in those competitive districts, I think Susan's right. Those other districts, probably closer to 25,000.
And how about school board?
Now, almost as much.
Yeah, I think so. Now that they're partisan races, it makes a difference.
I don't know the answer to this question, so I'm going to ask you. The Democrats, how much money can they pour in to help their candidates in some of these races? Like you mentioned, there's District 9 that Matthew Park is going to be in. There's District 5 where that Democrat's going to have a fierce fight.
Right.
How much money can they come up with to help out their candidates?
They will come up with some, because remember, we talk about this frequently when we're talking about city versus county. Knoxville City, skews blue, and there's a lot of blue money within the city. Not only that, the state party has now recognized that, hey, Knoxville Democrats have sort of gotten their act together, and they're running good candidates, and it's about building a bench, because some of these Democratic candidates one day, conceivably may be running for governor, certainly running for state offices that historically, or at least in the last 20 years, we've not been competitive in. So they're going to get money from the state level. They're going to get money from the local level. That money will largely come from city donors. So however much money a Democrat needs to run, if they demonstrate a commitment to running, getting out there and knocking on doors, being active, they'll get the money they need from both the local and the state party.
I just want to
I want to
update
give Matt shout out to Matt Shears.
Matt Shears, I
who
can't
was their
say enough good
Democrat
about him.
Party chairman. He's moved now, but he was young and aggressive and very likable. We've had him on our show some, and I give him a lot of credit for what he did to recruit candidates.
I
Good
just want
candidates.
to update our viewers. We're at the top of the hour here, and already the state of Tennessee has been called for both President Biden and Donald Trump, former President Trump, as far as the primary goes. We're looking at local elections and unofficial results in Knox County and surrounding counties, because there are some other races at stake. We'll talk to John North about that, but no precincts reporting yet by Knox County, and we're awaiting that. We got our first results at 8:36. I just wanted to reset at the top of the hour.
Thank
So
There you
there's-
go.
Yes. Is there anything else we should cover, Juan, from your point of view?
I don't think so. It will be interesting to see what turnout turned out to be, because it was lower. There were disappointments across the state of Tennessee. It was lower compared to 2020, and it was lower here in Knox compared to 2020 and 2016. You go from 25K, you hope maybe you can salvage it to around 60,000, maybe 65,000. That might be a reach today. I don't know. Some precincts did have good turnout today, it sounds like, from kind of our casual conversations. But others were, I think Chris talked to us, Chris Davis, the elections
administrator.
chief, and he phoned in a couple times to us during the 4 and 5 o'clock
Yes.
shows and said it was steady, but nothing to write home about.
My concern is going to be the August election. If we think this turnout's low, I'm fearful that the August election could be even worse, because again, remember, the presidential election
Draws people.
Right, draws people in November, and you're just going to be voting on local races.
Will it this year?
Well, you'll have. I
Some
guess
ca-
that's
See,
right.
I'm not so sure even in November. I think this is going to be a really unusual presidential election in November. I think it's clear from all the polling, if you believe polling, that people are not excited about Donald Trump.
Either way.
Or Joe Biden. They think Joe Biden's too old. They think Donald Trump is
Too crazy.
or whatever. And I could anticipate seeing a low turnout, or a lot of write-ins.
A low turnout that depends on
In November.
independents.
In November. I'm talking about in November.
Depends on the independents.
I have a feeling that
Yeah.
everything will get fired up, and come November, everybody will have picked their sides and get a little worried, and that turnout will be similar to what we've seen in other presidential
Well, we're already
races.
hearing like the young people are turning off of Joe Biden because they're
Right.
mad at him about student loans or Gaza.
They should be
and
happy
we're hearing
about
that
that.
African Americans are already sort of not as enthusiastic for Biden, and he needs that segment.
Look, as a Democrat, I'm telling you, Joe Biden has work to do. I still think he will be in this race, and he will win this race come November, but he can't just sit back and be Dark Brandon and clever like that. He's got to get out there and do work. He's got to sell America on what he's really done, and he's done a lot of good. You still hear, oh, gas is terrible. Well, it's down $1 from when he started. Oh, the economy's terrible. every metric you can measure it by. It's much better.
Wait a minute, Don. I got to correct you. When he started, Donald Trump in November, gas was $1.89.
When he started, when
When
he
he
left,
started.
when he left, it was
No,
$1
no.
higher than
It was
it was.
$1.89
when
in
he left the
November
office.
2020.
I think we look back, you'll see a different
I
number.
can promise you it was
Well, it's gone down-
$1.89.
it's gone
Well,
down
that
over
was thanks to
$1.
COVID, wasn't it?
That's right. It's
No.
gone down over $1
No.
in the last year.
It was thanks to
It's gone
us
down over
creating
$1.
our own energy in the United States.
Well, gee, who tapped into that? Joe Biden.
Oh my God! Surely
Joe
you don't
Biden
believe
opened
that,
up the reserves
Bosh.
in the last year.
He shut down the Alaska pipeline. He shut
a
down
pipeline
all
that
of the
wasn't going to
drilling.
benefit US
Don,
dollars.
you
probably
can't
ought to
tell
get us
me
off
Joe
YouTube.
Biden has helped our
Absolutely.
energy.
Absolutely.
Don,
UT's
you've
gonna
lost your
ta-
mind.
YouTube's going to take
And you're going to be voting
Yeah.
for Trump, and you're telling me I lost my mind? Okay.
So still, precincts reporting 0 according to Knox County. It's after 9 o'clock. We're spinning our wheels here waiting for results. But Susan, you made this point on various inside Tennessees, and I want to get your thoughts on it. You said abortion is a real threat for your party in this election, and that the immigration question may be a real strength. Do you see that true today, and do you think that carries through right through November?
I do. We're seeing it certainly in Tennessee. We're seeing it in several. I think there's 32 or 35 states that have an abortion issue on the ballot. Well, that is going to get a lot of people to vote. The pro-life and pro-choice people both are going to turn out. But I think you're going to see a lot of women, younger women particularly, who are probably wouldn't have voted otherwise, that will go to the polls because of the abortion issue that's on these state ballots. And certainly immigration is the number one issue in all the polling right now. Biden and Trump both went down to the border this past week, but it's a Republican strength. It's a Republican issue. Trump has tried to be, we all heard build the wall in 2016, and he built sort of a wall, and Biden stopped it. And we're getting millions of immigrants, illegals coming into our country. And people, they're moved into the big cities. They've moved into these sanctuary cities, and the mayors who are Democrats of these sanctuary cities are not happy. So that is a problem for Joe
No
Biden.
question, both parties are concerned about immigration. The Democrats, we had a plan on the table, and Trump and other Republicans scuttled it.
Oh, don't start that.
They did, Susan. By every single pundit, right and left.
Because the
Republicans
bill
killed
was
it because it was
full
tied
of
to
a
Ukraine and
bunch of
Israel.
stuff.
It was exactly where money should be. Now they tried to pass a standalone, and Trump's like, "Don't do it. It helps me if it happens on my watch." That's great.
Don,
That's good
you
for the
cannot
country.
claim immigration as your issue.
I'm going to tell you, my party absolutely made huge mistakes about immigration. I'm the first one to admit that. They're trying to do the right thing now, and now all of a sudden...
Because it's an election year.
No, not an election year. It's the right thing to do, Susan.
Because it's an election year.
And
You
because
heard
it's an election
nothing
year,
out
Trump
of it
said,
before
"Don't
this
pass
year.
it. It won't help me."
Susan, let me ask you this.
Yeah, we should have this on Inside Tennessee.
Well, I
It's
know.
a lot more
Well, what
fun.
I think matters is what the voters are going to take out
That's
of all
right.
of that.
That's right. And
Well,
that's
the polling,
where, that's
the
where
polling is
messaging-
showing that it's a Republican issue.
And I agree with that right now. And that's where the Biden camp and the left has to do a better job of saying what they're doing and what they've done.
One of the things that we've traditionally seen from both parties is to have a party platform. This is where we stand, that you can check off various issues. The Republicans don't have that. We've
We
talked
do
about
have
in the past,
platforms, but
but
Not
there's
one
not
that-
an official
They're not-
Republican platform that lists these are our priorities, because you've outlined what makes you a Republican,
Right.
which is different than, and there's always been division within the party.
We
but
used to have-
traditionally been able to point to.
we
some-
used to have platforms
And the last
that were
Trump killed
printed,
it, right.
and you sat on the rules committee, you sat on the platform committee when you went to convention, and I've served on some of those committees in the
So
past.
is it helpful not to have a platform, or would it be more helpful to have a platform?
I don't know. I sometimes the platforms were so ridiculous that I wonder why I was a Republican if I really read the platform.
If you're a personality like Donald Trump, it doesn't matter.
Right, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter because we all know what he stands for. That's not necessarily what the party as a whole stands for. But Trump has taken over the party. I mean, there's no question about that. The guy's getting 80% of the vote in Tennessee. This was a state that used to be the party of Howard Baker and Lamar Alexander and Bob Corker and Fred Thompson and, what was considered moderate Republicans.
And likewise with the Democrats. You can go through the
Right.
list of
Phil
moderate
Bredesen
Democrats.
and
Right.
Ned McWhorter and people like that. And we've become split to the right and to the left. And it's not the moderate state that it used to be. And I regret that. I think it's a mistake that's happened.
You might have burst into flames if you had to say Sasser and Gore, though. There.
Do you,
I wouldn't have said those.
do you think it's important to have a platform, Don?
I do. I do, because I think it tells people what you're going to stand for. I think it can be broad-based. The Democrats have done a much better job of being inclusive in the last 40 years, 50 years really, than the Republicans. But again, recently, most of that's attributed to Trump. I think, like Susan said, sometimes you can feel, gosh, is this really my party? But if you leave it broad-based, and when I get asked, Don, why do you identify as a Democrat or progressive? It's a pretty straightforward one-line answer. I'm with a party that I believe that will help people that really need help. Okay, now we can argue all day where that line's drawn, but that's why I'm a progressive and that's why I'm a Democrat. And unfortunately, I don't see that as much from the Republican Party. No offense to Susan, who does not demonstrate usually that quality. I only tease you, because every now and then you go somewhere that doesn't feel very right to me. But I do think a platform helps, and it really sets out what you stand for. Because if I hear one more right network go, oh, they're communists, they're socialists, they're anarchists, that's not what the party is. Okay, and nor are most of the Republicans. They're not Nazis either. Okay, we just disagree. And I always say, I miss the days of a competent Ronald Reagan and a slightly intoxicated Tip O'Neill sitting down in the White House and getting things worked out. And we're not there anymore.
Our party used to be, we had three things.
Yes.
There were lower taxes,
Defense.
less government, and a strong national defense. And everybody could agree on that. So you had this large tent that those were sort of the three things.
The pillars.
Everybody could agree on. And then it kind of went this way, and I still submit that if we would go back to those three tenets, that we could all get along.
I
a
would
whole
say
lot
that
better.
you all have to get out of the, you talk about less government, get out of people's lives, the personal
That's what
issues,
yeah.
the
This-
abortion.
no question.
This is why it's so
race.
weird to me, just as an observer and somebody who is fascinated by party politics, to see Republicans unable to support Ukraine funding. I'm like,
it's
how
amazing.
can that be possible?
I think
and
it's just
support
because it became the Biden. It was the Biden
I mean,
support.
Ukraine is so important to Europe. It's profoundly important.
Well,
And
our-
that means it's important to us.
This goes back to 2009 when Mitch McConnell stood up and said, we've got one job, and that's to stand against, and I'm paraphrasing, stand against everything that Barack Obama stands against and to get him unelected. That's not the job of the minority or adverse party.
The
Period.
zero-sum game politics is what you're referring to.
That's right. That's right.
All right, we're going to take a break here on YouTube because we've got to come up and get on the air over at WBIR. But we appreciate you watching us for some analysts and
A few
analysis.
little arguments here and there.
Yes, but more of this to come on Inside Tennessee coming up this week, where we recap the election. But we're going to leave it there for now. I'm just going to tell our producer, Tom Barclay, we're going to shut it down because we've got to get on the air on WBIR here shortly. So we appreciate you watching on YouTube and hope you continue to watch us both here and over at WBIR. If you've missed any Inside Tennessees recently, you can go to our Inside Tennessee page and see some of the guests that we've had. Thanks for watching, and happy election night. We'll run down turnout as well at the top of the hour, 11 o'clock on WBIR.
There's some numbers up there.